Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Great to have everybody here, and what an important topic. Of course, the Chamber of Commerce guy is telling you that, but we all live that each and every day in this room, and the importance of our Oregon business economy is really at a defining moment, I would say, and so we look forward to today's presentation. At the Salem Chamber, we believe in helping businesses prosper so our entire community may thrive. Our work is strategic, intentional, supportive, aspirational, and quite passionate. Please join me in welcoming a familiar face back to the podium today, our past president, Mike Herron.
Thank you, Tom. I got to say, I'm not really feeling the past part of past president right now, but I guess doing this is sort of like riding a bike. In all respect to Representative Anderson over here, sometimes I'd rather not. I'd rather just be in my car. So I want to welcome you all today to this is the penultimate session of this season's Forum Lunch series, and it's been an amazing season. We've seen an incredible slate of content, of speakers. We've seen growth in attendance, so thank you all for being here. I want to say a special thank you to a couple of people, which is anyone who's joined the Chamber in the last year and anyone who's here as your first time attending a Forum Lunch series luncheon. I want to say welcome to you. I also want to thank Mr. John here and the Hagen Hamilton Insurance Solutions team for sponsoring the entire season of these luncheons. Now, I've asked that you all stand with me and join in a moment of reflection and prayer, and then we'll follow with the presentation of our national anthem by the Oregon Senators Men's Barbershop Chorus. We take this time to pray and reflect on our lives and on this moment. We are thankful for the meal before us, for those who make this event possible. We are thankful for our elected officials and the leaders in this room. Help us have the heart of a servant. We are grateful for this day, for its blessings, its opportunities, and its challenges. We pray for wisdom, for strength, and guidance to take on each day with hearts and actions of love, joy, and kindness to everyone. Amen.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does the star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free, land of the free, and the home of the brave.
Wow. Please take your seats. The Oregon Senators Chorus, that was amazing. I will tell you, if you're interested in that, now I grew up hearing these guys come to different events and sing. I talked to past President Brent DeHart, who's also a member of the Senators. You saw him up there singing. And he said, if you're interested, go to thesenators.org. The fact that he invited me to join and hadn't even heard me sing tells you that if you're interested, they want you, you'll have a blast. So thank you to the Senators. That was amazing. Now, I'd like you to please join me as we watch a special video presentation from our series sponsors, Hagen Hamilton Insurance Solutions.
Do the right thing is our first value, and it's the most core to what we are as a business and what we do. We believe in long-term relationships. Doing things the right way is the only way we can do them. We've been in the community for 115 years, so everything we do starts with that value of do the right thing. We're going to make sure we do right by the client every single time.
Excellence is found in its pursuit. It's about getting a little bit better every day, overcoming challenges, setting high standards. Excellence is a habit. It's not a finish line.
I love working with my clients and strategizing with them to help them with their employee benefit plans. But coming back to the office and working as a team with my coworkers and those account managers is integral to what I do.
If you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with the team. When you think about your business and your company and looking out into the future, you want to be partnered up with companies that are going to be there for you. Companies like Hagen Hamilton.
Hagen Hamilton is proud to sponsor the Forum Speaker Series, and we thank you for joining us. Enjoy the presentation.
Not used to that. I want to take a quick moment to recognize a few groups of people that are here today. First, by waving your hands to the Salem Chamber Ambassadors group in their Navy blazers, making us all feel so welcome every time we come into a chamber event. You guys are amazing. Love to see your smiling faces when we get here. Now, I'd also like to recognize past presidents in attendance. If you'd please stand and we can recognize you. I see a couple of you down front here. Thank you. The next, any sitting directors of the Chamber Board of Directors, I'd like to have you stand and be recognized as well. Now I'd like to introduce those that are joining me today at the head table. Seated here immediately to my left, Jason John is the CEO and partner at Hagen Hamilton Insurance Solutions, our presenting sponsor. Next to him is Christina Chamberlain, who's a land use and corporate attorney at Sherman, Johnny & Hoyt, who serves as today's monthly sponsor. At the end of the table here is our keynote presenter today, Mr. Tim Knopp, Chief Prosperity Officer for the state of Oregon. We're pleased to have you join us today. Immediately to my right, Kathy Goss, well, to his right, Kathy Goss, past president of the Salem Chamber, joined by Dar Goss, her husband, both of whom are enjoying their retired life in Salem and abroad. I hear great reports from Thailand. And Kathy also served as Salem Kaiser School Board member, so please welcome them. Next, I'd like to welcome a number of community leaders and officials in attendance today. Salem Mayor Julie Hoy, Salem City Councilor Shane Matthews, Monmouth City Councilor Christopher Lopez, State Representative Tom Anderson, and Chemeketa Community College Board Member Diane Watson. Thank you and welcome. Now I'd like to welcome back to the podium Mr. Tom Hoffert.
Today, we are honored to recognize an organization who is helping connect people so projects can get done locally, on time, with Willamette Valley labor and skills, truly helping shape the spirit of Salem. As a service organization for local builders and contractors, the Salem Contractors Exchange is home to nearly 500 local companies. With monthly and annual programming designed to bring people and assets together, their services include project searches, pre-bid conferences, and bid results data. Simply put, the Salem Contractors Exchange helps companies succeed by providing high-quality project leads, reduced travel and bidding costs, as well as networking and social events. A key leader within this organization is Lori Cooley. Lori welcomes businesses in and starts connecting dots. She brings fierce energy and a passion for the trades. It is a pleasure to have Lori working on behalf of the thousands of local employees who are taking on the building projects all around us each and every day in the Willamette Valley. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our May Spirit of Salem Award recipient, Salem Contractors Exchange, represented by Lori Cooley. We're going to take a photo with Jackie over here real quick. All right. Please take a moment and say hello to the group.
Well, I didn't see this coming. For those of you, he just introduced me. I'm Lori Cooley. I've been with the Exchange for 18 years. I see some familiar faces, and I'm excited to continue to be an asset to the Chamber and to Salem Contractors Exchange. Thank you.
If you have been to one of their meetings in the last year plus, it is an incredibly vibrant place, so I invite you to check them out. Now, it is my distinct honor to introduce our monthly sponsor for today, Sherman, Johnny & Hoyt, LLP. Dating back to 1949, Sherman, Johnny & Hoyt has been helping residents and businesses with their legal needs. Located in a beautifully renovated historic church in downtown Salem, their attorneys place high value on the pursuit of legal excellence, personal integrity, and community service. The business has been built on an ability to provide clients with responsive, efficient service and a cost-effective, practical solution. They work with clients who seek assistance maximizing opportunities, planning and mitigating risks, and solving difficult personal and business issues. Understand this: if you seek the advice from their firm, expect that the first order of business will be them listening. After understanding your situation, your needs, and your objectives, the Sherman, Johnny & Hoyt team will evaluate and outline options and recommend potential solutions designed to accomplish your goals in a straightforward manner. Following her comments, Mrs. Chamberlain will introduce our keynote presenter. I am now pleased to introduce you to Land Use and Corporate Attorney Christina Chamberlain, representing our monthly sponsor, Sherman, Johnny & Hoyt.
Hi, thank you for coming. I'm just gonna make one little tweak. I mostly do real estate law. Anderson over here does land use. We are a full-service business and real estate firm right here in Salem, and we have a handful of our attorneys over here at this front table, and we'd love to meet you if you want to come say hi. We love being a part of this community. We count ourselves very fortunate to have the opportunity to partner with the Salem Chamber of Commerce, an organization that brings value to our community in so many ways, including an opportunity to hear from today's keynote speaker. I am honored to introduce Oregon's Chief Prosperity Officer, Tim Knopp. Tim Knopp is a native Oregonian, Central Oregon resident of more than 4 decades, and now a Salem resident. As Chief Prosperity Officer, he will provide key insights from decades of experience in public service, business advocacy, and community engagement. He has a wide breadth of experiences to draw from. Logging in Eastern Oregon, serving on the board of directors of the Bend Chamber of Commerce. He was Executive Vice President of Central Oregon Builders Association and was the Executive Director of Building Partners for Affordable Housing. He even made time to coach Little League. Tim Knopp's public service spans 3 terms in the Oregon House of Representatives from 1999 to 2005, where he served as House Majority Leader from 2003 to 2005. He was then elected to the state Senate from 2013 until 2025, including serving as Senate Minority Leader. Throughout his public service, he served on key committees and played an integral part in representing the business community, advancing fiscal responsibility and workforce development, and promoting the small businesses in Oregon that are the backbone of our economy. We are very excited to have him here today and to have him serve in this new position. Help me welcome to the podium Oregon's Chief Prosperity Officer, Tim Knopp.
Well, thank you. It's great to be with you today. I know many of you from years of being here in Salem. And as I thought about what I would talk about, I decided that it would be great to start with where it all started for Oregon. So there, as you know, there was something called the Oregon Trail. And thousands and thousands of people came on the Oregon Trail. But in 1845, my family came on the Oregon Trail in the New London Emigrating Company for Oregon. So they each had a name. Each wagon train had a constitution. And one of my relatives was on that committee that created the Constitution. But as they started out, they were a few days in, the notes and letters that they wrote and sent back to family, one of them said this: "I must say to you, this is a greater undertaking than most men think it is to go to Oregon, but if it is the country that is represented, all who go to it will be repaid with their trials and vexations." And then later in the trip, they have arrived in Oregon. So far, I have seen Oregon. I do not like it. For it is nothing but a waste country fit for neither agricultural purposes nor for grazing. But this evening, we met with Dr. Elijah White in the company of 4 men, who assures us that the Willamette Valley is one of the most beautiful sustenance of life. So there you have hope at the beginning, not so much hope as they enter Oregon, but then hope again as they come to the Willamette Valley. And of course, guess where we are? The Willamette Valley. And they had an interesting way of spelling the Willamette Valley, by the way. It was Wallmatt, Wilmette, or Walmart. That was not necessarily representatives of my family, but that was a accumulation of letters. And I just thought, how interesting how Oregon starts. And as you know, Valentine's Day in 1859, Oregon becomes a state. And we have an incredible state, I think, that is fit for agriculture and many other things. And as we know, the land has been tamed a bit from those early days. I saw some other letters where they said this is just all sage, and also I think they called it wormwood. And so a lot of that has been cleared these days, and we have lots of irrigated land here in Oregon. And we have a prosperous Oregon, I would say. But unfortunately, the current world economy, the national economy, and Oregon's economy, who are all tied together, are struggling a bit. And what we're going to see is an economy in 3 to 5 years that you don't recognize. And it's very important. Things are moving incredibly rapidly. And it's very important that Oregon get in front and get in on this economy that is going to be our reality. So really the question is, are we going to have the hope and the grit and take the risk as those pioneers did? They literally risked everything to come here, and some of them lost everything and had to start over. They lost family members, spouses, they lost their possessions going down the Columbia River, lots of different things. But in the end, they prospered and succeeded. So I was working last December, and I had just hired a exceptional young man. I'll call him young because everybody seems young to me these days. Exceptional young man to be my vice president of government affairs at the Central Oregon Builders Association. And he had worked for me in 2019 in my state senate office, one of the best employees I've ever had. I was so looking forward to working with him again, and we were making plans for the next 8 years and my retirement there at COBA. And then I got a call one day and said, somebody said, I put your name in for a position with the governor. I was like, oh, that's nice. You know, this is not a regular occurrence, but happened many times before, and nothing ever came of it. And so I was just like, yeah, that's fine. And then I got a call a few days later from the governor herself, who said, hey, I need you to come back to public service. And I said, well, what would I be doing? And she said, well, I've started this Oregon's Prosperity Roadmap because we have some danger signals in the economy. And I said, well, we sure do. And so we talked for a while, and 6 days later, I was working for Governor Tina Kotek as her Chief Prosperity Officer. And the reason I took the job is because we are at such a significant inflection point. As I mentioned, our economy is tenuous, and Oregon needs to be more competitive with other states around us, as well as internationally. And we are very much a trade state. So we trade a lot. You guys know agriculture is a significant trade area for Oregon. So the governor created a council to go along with hiring me. She actually hired the council first. And I saw it on TV, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's nice. I hope that's successful. Not knowing that I would ultimately be involved with that. And the council is meeting 5 times. They've met 3 already. They're going to meet in Eugene next week, and then, or maybe the end of this week now. End of this week. Time flies when you're having fun. So they'll have their 4th meeting, and then the 5th meeting will actually be right here in Salem, where they will give their recommendations from all the input that they've gathered over the last few months. So Oregon's Prosperity Roadmap, as the governor outlined it, is pretty simple. She wants to increase Oregon's GDP from where it currently is. We used to be above the national average. Now we're below the national average. We haven't gone negative yet, but we're not too far from it. And it's really important that we deal with that in a very substantial way. Second thing she wants to do is create living wage jobs. And in the document, it says now. So I assume that's right away. And so we will do everything we can to create more living wage jobs. And the third thing is to retain and grow Oregon businesses. So it is easier to keep what you have and expand what you have than it is to attract companies from other areas. And you probably have seen high-profile instances where companies, headquarters, what have you, have left their states, a few from Oregon, but we didn't have as many to start with as some of these other states do, California, New York, et cetera. And they're moving south, and they're not moving south for the weather. They are moving south because they are getting incredible offers from those states, sometimes cash offers, to move their businesses to those states. Their tax structures are lower than the taxes on the West Coast, and their regulations are much easier to work with in terms of getting their businesses started in those states. And so we are competing against many states, but Arizona, Idaho, Texas, Ohio, Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, and North Carolina are some of the states that are recruiting Oregon businesses. If you're a business of any size, you're probably getting monthly, sometimes weekly inquiries to move your business. And quite frankly, financially today, those might be decisions that will encourage people to say, you know what, I love Oregon, but the bottom line suggests that I need to move to another state. Well, we can, and we should, and we will turn that around. So I told the governor this is a no-fail mission, because if we don't turn this around and turn it around fairly quickly, as I say, we will be Detroit for 4 decades with a slightly better view. And Detroit suffered from the loss of some major industry, mainly the auto industry, but others as well, and has struggled and struggled and struggled. And Oregon could be in that exact same situation if we don't become more competitive. So as the council has moved out to essentially ask Oregonians what it is that they believe needs to change in order for us to increase our GDP, create more living wage jobs, and retain and grow Oregon businesses, we've gotten a lot of input. So the council had a survey, which I know some of you went online. It was up for about a month. Over 1,000 people filled out that survey. Lots of great data there. And then, of course, the council is meeting. They added a 6th meeting in Astoria. Not an official one, but more of a roundtable and listening session for Oregon businesses. But as I looked at the schedule, it was Portland, Redmond, Pendleton, Salem, and Eugene. And I looked at that and said, you know what? We're a bigger state than this. And so I said, I tell you what, I will cover the rest of the state. And so we've had, I think tomorrow in Medford will be my 38th meeting. That includes the ones with the council itself. And I've been pretty much in every corner of the state, some multiple times. And there are some themes that are starting to be somewhat unanimous. And it's really important that the council, Prosperity Council, look at those and determine what types of recommendations that they can make for the governor to change what's currently happening. Because we're on a downward trajectory right now. And even if you look at the last decade and you say, well, it was pretty good for Oregon, things have changed so rapidly in the last couple of years that if you're not paying attention to it, you're going to be wrong in the way you think about what's happening, because it's going to be a permanent shift. This is not some lull in the action. It's a permanent shift toward basically a new economy, and that involves everything that you guys are starting to see. Now, some people have said, well, AI is taking over. It's not just taking over. It is going to be a significant part of the economy. It will literally run the economy. And jobs are going to be different, and our companies are going to be different. And you've seen like some of the layoffs that are happening at big companies because they get the attention of the press, right? I mean, some 10,000 layoffs here and 5,000 here and 30,000 here overnight. What are they doing? They're preparing for AI. And they're moving their infrastructure into the opportunities that allow them to take advantage of that. And we are all going to deal with AI in some way. Now, I'm not suggesting that everybody loses their job overnight. There are certain sectors that are more likely to be vulnerable to job losses, and those already are, and they will continue to be transferred over to the AI sector, where you don't need a human to do those jobs. Right here in Salem, there is a robotics company, and you're going to see a lot more of the robotics that are going to also take over in the workplace. And jobs that you think that can't be done by robotics, almost anything can be. And so I thought, I worked with construction companies, and I was like, good news, nobody's going to be able to do construction with robotics or AI or whatever. And then I started exploring it, and I was like, so there's a machine that really roofs a house. And I was like, no way. And then I watched it and I was like, oh, yep. So as those machines get better and they get more ingrained in the economy, and it gets more expensive to have employees, and it gets harder to find them because people are still hiring and looking for talent almost everywhere. And almost everybody I talk to is like, if I could find somebody that would show up on time every day, work the full day, and do a good job, I'd hire them tomorrow. I'd hire them today and start them today. So people are still hiring employees, but you're starting to see a significant shift. And so as I have gone around the state, I've talked to, let's see, it's probably pretty close to about 1,000 people when you include all of the, all the meetings that I've been in, all the listening sessions. And so here are some of the key things that I've heard from around the state. We need a culture change in state agencies. And it's not that, agencies are bad. It's just it feels like to the people that are working with them from the private sector that they don't work at the same speed as business. So there's the speed of business and there's the speed of government. And I think we all know that the speed of business is quite a bit faster than the speed of government. And I think a lot of people feel like that they are not having a helpful partner, but maybe somebody that's not quite as helpful, maybe putting up roadblocks, and in some cases just literally trying not to help them succeed. So the culture change that people want to see is, how do we get to yes, and how do I help you succeed in what you're trying to do, especially if you're a business. And one of the second things that I've heard at almost every stop, well, I think this is every stop, the cat tax. So people have said the cat tax is a problem for Oregon, and I have numerous examples of companies who don't want to grow beyond $1 million, because at $1 million, that's the threshold, as you know, where the cat tax kicks in. And they're like, we can't afford to pay that. And so we're probably going to look, if we're going to look to expand, we're going to look to move somewhere else. That is a serious problem, because $1 million businesses are not rich businesses. They are businesses that are kind of second stage and starting to become prosperous. But if businesses that are becoming prosperous are wanting to move out of Oregon, that is a serious problem and needs to be fixed very quickly, because as I said, businesses are getting recruited all the time. And if you are, you're trying to figure out where you're going to be and you're making plans, people make those plans years in advance. They don't just, one day go, I think I'll move to Texas or whatever. Right now, they're making plans from a year or 2 or 3 from now. And what we've seen is some bigger businesses start to put footprints of their business outside of Oregon. So we've seen that with one of Oregon's biggest companies, Intel, now in other areas. There are roughly 20 fabs right now. So fab is I just think of it as a very large building with lots of multi-million-dollar equipment in it. So for high tech. So Intel built fabs out in Hillsboro, and they have a city of about 20,000 people that work for Intel out there. There's 20 fabs being built in the United States right now. None of them are in Oregon. And that is a problem, because that tells you that the future for those companies is somewhere else. It is not here. And that is a problem. Why is that a problem? Because Oregon gets roughly 80% of its income in terms of revenue for the state state programs, all the programs that you guys care about. Keeping bad people locked up, educating our kids, taking care of health care for those who can't take care of it for themselves, for seniors, what have you. All that's funded by employees. So Oregon does best when we have businesses that are created that are hiring people at a pretty high wage because they pay significant income taxes. And if those are starting to taper off, and they are, and so what we've seen is those six-figure jobs or higher start to taper off, and they're being replaced in our economy, but with jobs that are significantly lower paying, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. So that delta, at some point, starts to create a significant problem. And that's part of what we're seeing, and that's part of what the slowdown is about. Now, I would say there's good news there, because you wouldn't think it would be good news that, for instance, Intel would lay off 3,000 people, 7,000. I honestly lose track of what these companies are laying off and such, but it's still significant, and it's important. Why is it important? Because the people that are being laid off are not only high-wage workers, but they also are high-skill workers. And other companies want those employees. So they will certainly try to recruit them to their companies outside of Oregon, but many of them don't want to leave. So what's happening is we're having startups happen from those employees that make or made six figures or more, many times multiples of that, at Intel and places like Intel. And they're creating new businesses. And those businesses are like first stage, and they're, I've talked to dozens and dozens of these businesses, and they are wondering if, they're getting started, they're starting to produce a product, they're, I think stage 7, you're starting to produce products, but they are ready to launch, but they're questioning whether they should do that in Oregon. Many of them took a opportunity. Its acronym is QSBS, Qualified Small Business Stock Exemption. And lots of these owners and founders of these companies don't really take salaries in the beginning, and if you've owned a small business, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're the last one that gets paid, and sometimes you don't get paid, and sometimes for very long periods of time. And so they took basically stock options in the company, so if one day it went public, that they would essentially get paid back. Well, we changed the law on them, in the last session, and that is creating a significant problem for many of these businesses. And I would say it is of an urgent nature that we move in a direction to help those businesses regain their footing that they had, because they will all move somewhere else, like all of them. And most of the businesses that they are starting are businesses that don't necessarily have to be here. Like if you're a coastal fishing business, you kind of have to be in Oregon because they haven't figured out how to move the coast yet, right? If you are in the tree business or the farming business, you kind of have to stay here because the trees and the farm land is here. So you don't really get to move that. But these businesses are capital intensive, but they can move anywhere. And capital and investment goes where it's wanted, and it goes to the easiest point of investment. If you tell it through your regulation or your taxation that you don't want it, they've got options, more options than they've ever had before, and people are taking them. So I don't know if you guys saw recently, but there was out of Portland, there was a stat, and I can't remember how many buildings it was, but let's just say it was the top, 10 plus buildings in Portland that used to be worth $10 billion. And today, they're worth $3 billion. Now, that's a problem, not just for the people who own them, but it also means that people have left those buildings. They've left their leases. Portland is about 30% empty. And if you know anything about leasing, business, what have you, that's a problem. And then, to top it off, it's a huge problem for local government. Why? Because the businesses and these buildings, these owners, who own them at $10 billion, now own them at $3 billion, and guess what they're doing? They're saying, hello, tax man, my building is not worth, these buildings are not worth $10 billion anymore. They're worth $3 billion, and therefore, the taxes have to be adjusted. So as they're selling, they are adjusting, and they're adjusting to a much lower rate, and that is a massive problem for funding for programs, especially in Portland. That's happening in other areas of Oregon, but to a much less significant degree than it is in Portland. So we have a big issue there that needs to be resolved, and we're going to need the help of our local government officials from Portland to help resolve some of the issues that they have that are driving that equation. And then other things that have been pretty universal, and this is one that's driving seniors out, is that Oregon not only has, call it a death tax, some people know this is an estate tax, but it doesn't really kick in until you're dead, so I call it a death tax. So our threshold in Oregon is $1 million, the lowest in the country. And so when you get to be about 55, 60 years old, anybody you talk to who will give you free advice and financial advisors who will charge you for it, I'll tell you, do not die in Oregon. Move somewhere else, or your kids will inherit very little or less than you would want them to. And here's the thing that I think a lot of our policymakers aren't getting. They're not all leaving. They're re-domiciling. So they're spending more than half the year in a state that has less income taxes, probably less property taxes, and probably no estate taxes. Perfectly legal. And they probably are visiting us, well, about right now, when the good weather kicks in. So they'll be here from now until September, maybe October, and then they'll head back home to wherever home is, and they will spend enough time to be a legal resident of another state. Some people leave altogether, but what is happening is those people who are of means, they are not only taking their estates ultimately to somewhere else, so they're, Oregon's not going to access those tax dollars, but they're taking their donation dollars in many cases over time to somewhere else. So all the nonprofits that exist in our communities are going to get less money over time because these people are going to become attached somewhere else, and their dollars are going to end up somewhere else. And that's a huge problem for the nonprofits that are serving so many different items in our community, from helping with healthcare to food banks to Boys and Girls Clubs, and you name it. All these nonprofits exist out there, and I bet you every single one of them is struggling for dollars. And part of it is because they don't have access to the same people that they used to, and those dollars are moving somewhere else, and so it's harder to get them. Another thing that has been pretty universal has been essentially talking about permitting costs and or the time value of money as it relates to permits. So an example is a mine, so a gold mine. They've been working on their permit for a number of years, so I've heard multiple numbers, but I've heard 15 years, I've heard 20 years. And, you know, you think about it, it's like, 20 years ago, gold was not like it is today, right? So not as valuable. And I think they're obviously more interested in getting their permits perfected and starting because, gold is at $4,000 to $5,000 an ounce, where 20 plus years ago it was probably under 1,000. And makes just the business sense, makes more sense now than it would have back then. So we need to do better in terms of helping people get the permits that they need. And I don't want anybody to take from my comments that somehow that Oregon is just going to go start, digging up the land everywhere and all that. So in Oregon, we're going to do things in a sustainable way. We're going to do it in an environmentally friendly way. But make no mistake, whether it's lithium, uranium, gold, silver, copper, what have you, it is going to be mined. The question is it going to be mined here, where it is sustainable and environmentally friendly, or somewhere else in the world where children may be doing the work? And there may be no labor standards whatsoever. And so the idea that somehow that if it's lithium, and Oregon has one of the potentially the biggest lithium mines in the world, one of the top 5, if it was chosen to be pursued. We all use lithium today. You probably are using it with your cell phone if you have one, with your cars. Lots of other appliances have lithium in them. So the idea that we can have locally sourced lithium from Oregon that is necessary, the potential for an Oregon lithium mine could produce 20% of U.S. lithium for over 100 years and is a $1 billion a year revenue source, which means lots of taxes for you. And you know what else it means? It means 600 direct jobs at over $100,000 a year in Malheur County. Now, is it going to be easy to do? No. There are definitely some issues. You have to look at, the wildlife issues, and you got to look at water issues, and you got to look at power. So here's what I found in 100 days. There's basically 4 categories of businesses that can move the needle in a substantial way. Now, I'm a small business guy, but none of these are small businesses, okay? So there's, let's just call it roughly 25 businesses that have almost $45 billion in capital. That is billion with a B. They want to invest in Oregon. And they fall into 4 categories. And the first category, and I put these categories together, so you can break them up if you like, but semiconductor, bioscience, and AI is one category. And I simply call it one category because it's high tech and it involves engineers. So there you go. There's billions of dollars in that category of capital investment that wants to come to Oregon. They're just looking for the business case and the consistency of the reason to either grow here or come here. And about half are new and about half are already existing businesses that want to expand. Second category is energy. So we have significant energy resources in the ground. Geothermal, geological hydrogen, substantial energy that can power Oregon. And the idea behind these companies that are going to come to Oregon, I would hope, is that we would like them to use their energy that they are going to generate as renewable here in Oregon versus somewhere else. If you go to the South, you can make lots more money in California. So it would behoove us to work with them and create contracts that are beneficial to Oregonians to keep that energy here, because we are already overprescribed. If you work for PGE or Pacific Power, you're probably thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, if we're going to expand, how are we going to do that? Because we do not have the power for a lot of these companies. We're running out. And there's many reasons for that, but we need more power in order to expand our economy, because the new economy eats up power. And you use AI. If you don't think you do, you do. You just don't know it. And you'll know it eventually, but AI uses way more power than anything else that you could possibly think of. So we have to have and somehow resolve that power issue. And we have companies that can do that for Oregon. The third category I already mentioned, and it's natural resources and minerals. So it's our forests, our fisheries, our ag producing land, and then minerals throughout Oregon. And most of the minerals, surprise, surprise, are in rural areas. So think about the opportunities that there may be, again, to do this sustainably and protected environmentally, but done here in Oregon. And then the fourth category is what I would call miscellaneous manufacturing, but I would throw food production manufacturing into that as well. But it would be, it would be sawmills, it would be general manufacturing that people are doing. So in each of these categories, the majority of the businesses that I'm talking about, of the 25, are billion or multi-billion dollar capital investments. Understand Oregon's GDP on an annual basis is roughly $300 billion. So to get any part of $45 billion would be huge. So I'm a baseball fan, and we do not need to bat 1,000 to be in the Hall of Fame. If you bat 300 for any period of time, you're probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame. So that's 30%, right? So if we get 30 to 50% of this capital, these billions of dollars in capital, Oregon's economy will rebound. So the question isn't if, it's how far, how fast can we go? So here's where I get to the ask for you. I'm going to tie it back to those pioneers who decided that they would risk everything, that they would take a chance, and that they would embrace, at that time, the new world for them. They had no idea what it really was. They'd heard reports here and there. They didn't know what it was. But we need to work and move in the same direction as Oregonians at the same time with elevated voices. I'm not suggesting that you yell at anybody. But we have lots of partners that will need to be involved in order to move us in the right direction toward an economy that has living wage jobs, that increases Oregon's GDP, and that grows Oregon businesses here. And the governor will take the recommendations from the council. She will determine which one she wants to do, which one she thinks will move the needle, which things are politically, available and possible. Politics is the art of the possible. And she will move on those, and I will be helping her and you to this new economy that is coming. It's just a question of whether it's coming to Oregon in a significant way or whether it's going to pass us by somewhere else. So my ask is that you all engage in a substantial and significant way to help move us in that direction. Because working together, we can accomplish anything, and we can accomplish the investment and the jobs that are going to be here for your kids, maybe for you, for your grandkids. I got grandkids now. Love them to stay in Oregon. But there's such a great opportunity out here. And Salem is at the forefront of that because you have our capital. A nice new capital that is now opened up. If you haven't been there, the front now doesn't have a fence around it. There's a little fence off to the side. And I work at the State Library across the street. But you have an opportunity to work with our lawmakers. And our lawmakers, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, need to work together to make sure that we are creating the opportunities that are there for us. Because really those big opportunities fall into those 4 buckets. Now, small businesses are going to get created. Some of them are going to work, some of them aren't going to work. But in order to move the needle, you need to have the larger businesses that are investing billions of dollars worth of capital, and you have to have those small businesses that are investing. I started my business 40 plus years ago with $500. Now, $500 was a lot more money 40 years ago than it is today, but it's not billions, and it wasn't millions, and it wasn't tens of thousands. So lots of businesses get started at a shoestring in somebody's garage and grow from there. Hewlett-Packard is a great example of that. It was in California, but still. And old Shoe Dog started out of his trunk, right? So Phil Knight and Nike, multi-billion-dollar company, incredible business here in Oregon. So let's embrace and treat those businesses like the heroes and job creators that they are, because for every job they create, that is tax money that the state can use to help the people who need help and to fund all the programs you care about. So I want to thank you for having me here today. I will say we have a long way to go, but we need to make progress in a short amount of time. So the governor will likely have bills that she introduces in the 2027 session, or she'll be working with legislators who introduce those to make sure that Oregon can become the new prosperous state where prosperity visits every part of our state. And people say, what does it look like? Here's what it looks like. It looks like you don't have to worry for where your next meal is coming, or if you don't have a home, that you have one. And that on our tribal lands, prosperity visits them as well. And our rural communities, prosperity visits them as well, where there are jobs and there's health care and there's the opportunity for them to succeed and their kids to succeed. That's what prosperity looks like. So I hope that you will join us and lean in on this and work with us to make sure that this is a mission that succeeds and succeeds for the years to come, because we can do it. And for Oregon, there should be nothing better than for this state that started as a pioneer state and a state with tribal lands to be able to succeed beyond anyone's expectations. Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Chief Prosperity Officer Knopp is now going to take questions from our audience, and we have about 15 minutes put aside for that. We'll start with Ernesto Toskovich.
Tim, good to see you, my friend. I'm glad you joined Salem community as a new Salem citizen from Bend.
Yes.
All good things that you're saying, but I'm struggling to connect. We have energy investments, we have mining, and I cannot help to think about countries that have received large investments in mining and energy, which is Congo, Iraq, Venezuela, and so forth. They will bring money. But I don't think that we are removing the main impediment to capitalism and foundation and entrepreneurship, which is corporate activity tax. Can you help me understand how these initiatives will help little entrepreneurs start their businesses and not be choked by the tax system here?
Oh, thank you, Ernesto. It's good to see you. I hope we get to have lunch soon. So the corporate activity tax, as I mentioned, the CAT tax has kind of been the number one issue that Oregonians, especially business people around the state, have said is a problem. So I would expect that you will likely see some recommendation from the Prosperity Council. I don't know how specific it'll be, but I think everybody knows that we need to take a look at this and figure out how to make it work better. Some have suggested, well, just get rid of it. Well, I think that's not going to happen. So I think we need to figure out a way to make it work for Oregon where it doesn't take substantial revenue away from existing programs. So Oregon has a little budget issue of its own that it needs to deal with. So taking massive amounts of revenue off the table, it would not be in the cards. But there are ways to make it more efficient and better for entrepreneurs in the community, including reconnecting to the QSBS. And I think that you will see at least some movement or direction from the Prosperity Council in that way. But you know, how specific they get and you know, which individual recommendations they make, I don't know yet. They are keeping it close to the vest. They are talking amongst themselves, and they'll be meeting to discuss them for hours on end on Thursday. And so it'll be interesting to see where they start to land, because they have, you know, after the 15th, they have about a month left to figure it out and to give the governor her recommendations that she's been asking for.
Hey, Senator Knopp, Ryan Tribbett here, PacWest Lobby Group.
Hey.
I'm probably one of the only people in the room that's actually reviewed the spreadsheet with 1,000 responses from businesses. I appreciate it was verbatim, but I'm kind of curious how you're going to navigate a situation where this task force has been brought together to like create recommendations and new programs, but what businesses asked for was restraint and to stop moving the goalposts. So I'm just curious your thoughts on how to navigate that situation.
That's a great question, and I think that moves into the agency culture. So this is, I think, the opportunity for the governor to engage with their agencies to make sure that when we have the laws set up and the regulations are in place, that they actually work for people, and that our state employees are working to help people get to where they want to be, because almost everybody out there who's starting a business wants to be successful. And, you know, I mean, there are certain businesses probably some of us wouldn't appreciate that much, right? But for the most part, we do appreciate them. So whether they're, you know, an auto shop, a tire store, a dry cleaner, or, you know, the stationery store down the street, or, you know, the electronics store, whatever it is, whatever somebody's wanting to create, that they're going to be able to be successful. The goalposts don't keep moving on them. And I do think business feels a little bit like they've kind of had regulations stacked on top of them, you know, time after time after time. And the weight of all of it cumulatively is what's starting to hold them back. And so we need to try to find ways to get them to the point where they're able to operate successfully, because if our businesses are prosperous, that means our employees are going to be prosperous, which ultimately means that state and the state programs will be prosperous as well.
We're universally counting on you to help us do just that.
No pressure. Thank you.
Mark Wigg, and I have heard that businesses sometimes choose their location based on the quality of public education. Has that come up?
It has. Honestly, not as much as you would think, but it has. And I think everybody knows that Oregon's system is struggling, and that we have an opportunity, I think, to organize education in a way that's going to be more successful for kids. I was one of those kids that struggled to read. I remember around third or fourth grade. I moved back from Illinois, so the only time I've lived out of state. And when we moved there from Oregon schools, I was behind where the Illinois kids were. And I was able to catch up. It took about a year, and some tutoring from my fourth grade teacher who put me in a group of kids that was struggling with reading. And, now I read pretty good. I'm not a super fast reader, but, I'm able to read and hold my own. So, Oregon schools is definitely things that people are talking about, but it hasn't been, it hasn't been the number one issue that people have identified.
Christina Ballard. While I realize it would be a hard sell in Oregon, building data centers here, right? There is a great model in Finland where they're taking the waste from Microsoft data centers and repurposing it for energy and heat. And it seems like that's the sort of thing that could help solve a couple of the problems, the energy problem and some of the revenue problems, because those are huge companies.
Yeah, thank you. I've done a lot of research on this, and truthfully, needed to, because I have been in a lot of places in legislative committees, but they rarely put me on the natural resource committees because I'm not really from a tree cutting district, and I'm not from Portland, where you get a lot of more interest about environmental protection, and so or the energy sector. And so I've done a lot of research on the energy sector, and it is changing fast. And it's things like you suggest, that where people are becoming creative about how to use energy to not just waste the byproduct of it, but to figure out how to increase productivity with it. And you guys will be surprised in the next year or two what will happen in the energy sector. But I believe that in terms of renewable energy, it will become synonymous with Oregon like Texas is with oil. We will be that successful with renewable energy. And I'm not talking about wind, and I'm not talking about solar, because that has been mostly maximized with the commercial areas. Obviously, there's still residential where people could take advantage of that. But you're going to see some things that you don't see today that will change dramatically energy and energy consumption all across the country, but especially in Oregon.
Thank you for being here. Brent DeHart, Salem Aviation. For a relatively small amount, less than the state spent on Willamette University's baseball field, the governor could create a huge economic boost for Oregon's capital city and the entire Mid-Valley by connecting us to the world with airline service. So how does the capital city and our ag, our wine, our hospitality sectors here in the Mid-Valley get on the priority list for state investment?
I'll tell you what, I will talk to the governor about a flight or flights from Salem, commercial flights. I think you guys had one for a bit. I don't know if it's still around, but yes, air travel from Salem would be awesome. Yeah, and it's much needed, obviously, for this area, because Eugene's got their airport, Portland's got theirs, Bend has the Redmond Airport, and the Salem Airport has not been maximized in the way it could be in terms of commercial flight. The other thing you're going to see, and I hate to say this for the Jetson, the Jetsons group that watch cartoons on Saturday morning like I did, but there was, some of you are way too young to remember the Jetsons, but we're gonna have flying cars and taxis. So that is not that far off. So there are already airports that are currently working on those, and I would be willing to bet in 5 years that you will be seeing those. And maybe the Salem Airport would be a place where, they might be, might create a commuter spot for those. So who knows what's out there, but there's just so much stuff. And I thought we'd have flying cars way before now. So that's what the Jetsons told me in the cartoons when I was young, and I believed them. So I guess maybe I was just a little gullible then. But no, I mean, there's literally, you guys know about the drones and all that, and some similar technologies, but also some differences. But you are going to see the air taxis and air commuters with what look like flying cars. So that is not that far off. So,
Senator Knopp, will end with this last question, and my friend across the way is saving me the walk over, so she texted it to me. At the end of the day, actions speak louder than words.
Mm-hmm.
The governor's signature on SB 1507, the disconnect bill, tells me that the governor does not value the mechanisms that allow entrepreneurs to create more jobs, hence more revenue for all jurisdictions. Please explain how her position will help stop the doom loop.
Well, so the governor signed the bill. She was very clear about why she was doing it, and it would have created significant holes in education. There are already some significant holes there. You probably saw her executive order about not cutting school days because we already have an issue with kids, and we're on the lower end of kids in seats for the amount of days, and that is part of the issue that the gentleman over here identified in terms of education. And so she was not wanting to create a significant issue for Oregon schools as they were moving into their budget. I think the issue of QSBS and of the other issues where the businesses were concerned about what was going to happen with their ability to write off equipment and things like that. I think you'll see some of that revisited, but the short session is a difficult place to make big policy, and that was budget policy, and I think some of those policies are going to have to be relooked at in order for Oregon to reach its full potential and to keep companies here that are moving from first stage, second stage, and so on, and to grow here in Oregon, because they will leave if we don't make those changes. And if you don't think that's a problem, you really need to talk to them and understand what you're going to lose, because it's substantial, and it's really important that we, again, start thinking and treating entrepreneurs and risk takers as the heroes that they are, because they're creating jobs and they're creating income for the state, for all of us, to take care of the community members that need to be taken care of. So I think you'll see some changes from where we've been. I think the governor is committed to action. I don't think she would have hired me if she wasn't. So I believe, like all of you, that action is the most important thing. And I just would say engage and be a thoughtful and significant voice to the administration, to legislators, about what we need to do and where we need to go in order to be a prosperous Oregon for the next decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, for sharing both your time and your perspective with us today. I can't help it. Think you opened with an account of sort of the challenges and the adversities that the pioneers faced coming here, and then laid out what it sounds like to us is a lot of adversity and challenges to stay here. But I like to think that we have the same characteristics, the same grit, the same perseverance, the same stick to it that the pioneers had to see this one through. So thank you again for sharing with us today. I also want to recognize Allied Video Productions, Capital Community Media, and the Salem Convention Center staff for the work that you do to put these on. Thank you to Jason, John, and the Hagen Hamilton team for sponsoring our entire season. It helps so much to put these on when you've got a season-long sponsor. To Sherman, Johnny, and Hoyt, thank you for sponsoring this month. Special group that I want to thank, and I'd love for you to stand, that is the Salem Chamber staff, because you guys do a ton of work to make sure that we pull off amazing events every single time. So if you are on staff, please stand up and wave. At your tables is a sheet of all the monthly events with the QR code that'll take you to the website to register. That's where you'll see a lot of the handiwork of the staff, and appreciate it by signing up and by bringing your friends and by attending. We gather next month, speaking of events, we gather next month for the final session of this season. We are going to be presenting the 2026 Business of the Year Awards. So we're going to recognize 6 amazing companies working in our community, as well as an annual membership meeting and the graduation for Leadership Salem. So please join us Monday, June 8th, 11:30 to 1:30 p.m. in this building. I believe we're upstairs. Upstairs it is. And you can register right now at salemchamber.org. I want to close with, well, actually, I'm not going to close with that. Vote. May 19th. Ask your friends, ask your neighbors, get out and vote. I can't stress that enough. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I could if you want to come up and talk to me afterwards, but get out and vote. It's so important. Now I will close with the bouquet giveaway, courtesy of Roth's Fresh Markets. And today's winner is Renee Campbell of Select Impressions. Renee, if you want to come up and get your bouquet afterwards, we'll take your picture. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next month.
Les passants dans la rue nous envient.